Well, hey there, guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making a tabletop guitar rest. Well, I can already hear some of you saying, what the heck is a tabletop guitar rest? Well, if you play guitar or you know somebody who plays guitar, how many times have you seen them take their guitar after they're done playing a song and lean it up against a table and the thing does this and falls over? Honestly, it happens to all of us at some point in time. And if you are lucky, there's no damage, but it can snap headstocks. It could break tuning pegs. It could really put the neck out of whack and make it so that you have to go through all kinds of hassle to get it back aligned. This is a very simple device to help prevent that from happening. It's a great scrap wood project. So I'm going to head over to the bench now and show you what I've got in mind for this one. Well, I checked up in the rack and I had this gorgeous piece of mahogany. It's 5/8 of an inch thick. It has some beautiful colors. I just love the way it looks. And this is what we're going to make the majority of our project from. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to the table saw and I'm going to rip this in two strips that are 2.5 inches wide. And out of those pieces, I have squared them off and cut them to length here. This one here is just over 3 inches. This one is just over 2 5/8, and these are just over 2 inches. They will serve as, this will be the bottom, this will be the upright, and this will be the top. But now, guys, the thing is here is that I want this section here. I want this to be much thicker. That's why I have two of these. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a layer of glue here, and I'm going to laminate these two just over 2 inches long pieces. I'm going to laminate these together, clamp them, and put them aside and let them completely dry. Well, while we're waiting for that to dry up, we're going to work on our other pieces. So forget about your shorter one for now. We're going to take our longer one. This is the one that was cut to just over 3 inches and centered on our 2.5 inch side and 1 inch back from one edge. We are going to install a 1/4 threaded insert. Well, it is the next day and our glue up is dry. So what I want to do now is I'm going to take our two pieces, just so that you know, the one with the threaded insert is the bottom and this is the top. So I want to draw a line from the front edge of each one at 1 7/8 of an inch in from that front edge. And for this bottom piece, that front edge is where the insert is. Now that line at 1 7/8 is where we are going to be mounting this block. So this will go here and this will go here, with that line aligning up with the edge of our board here. But we need this to be a secure joint. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adding dowels. Well, what I have done is, in our laminated piece, in the center of one of our laminations, I have drilled some 1/4 inch diameter holes. They are centered on our 5/8 thick piece. They are 1/2 inch in and they're 5/8 of an inch deep. And I've drilled those holes on both sides. I also have some dowel centers here installed. So what I want to do is I'm going to line up a board here, line it up on our line at 1 7/8. And we're going to place our dowel centers down just like this. And we're going to give it just a little tap. And that has provided us here with two divots for the mating holes that will coincide with where these are. I'm going to do that on this one here as well, on our top piece. And what we're going to do is we're going to drill those holes 1/4 of an inch in diameter. And they will be probably about half the thickness of our 5/8 thick piece, so about 5/16 deep. Well, before we go much further, we're just going to do a dry fit. So I have some 1/4-inch dowels here. I've cut them to be 15/16 of an inch long, and we're just going to dry fit everything together and see how it lines up. And if we're happy with the alignment, we can give our pieces a good sanding on the inside surfaces in here, and we can glue and clamp it together and let it completely dry. All right, and that actually looks pretty good. It's they're nice and tight. The dowels line up, the edges line up here nicely. So those dowel centers, as long as you take your time, you can get some really great results. All right, so let's get this glued up and then we can carry on. Well, our glue up is dry, and I now want to take this over to the table saw. And from the top edge here down, we're going to cut this using our miter fence at an 11-degree angle. And after that cut, you're left with something like this. Now, guys, you may have noticed in that last clip that I used clamps to hold this to my fence. It's a very awkward piece, and it's best to let the clamp do the work for you and keep your fingers a little further away. So at this point in time now, what I want to do is I'm going to use a 3/4-inch circle template. I'm going to mark these sharp corners with that. I really don't want those sharp corners on there. So we're going to mark this at a 3/4 circle template. So that's a 3/8 radius. And once I get these two corners, both the top and the bottom corners marked, we're going to head over to the belt sander, and I'm going to take these down and really soften these cornered edges so that it's a little more aesthetically pleasing, we'll say. And that's pretty much the body of our holder done. We can put this aside, but we now need the part that's going to cradle the neck of our guitar. So what I have is I have another piece of mahogany. It's cut to the same width as our holder, the same thickness, 5/8 of an inch thick, and I've cut it to be 1 9/16 of an inch long. Guys, this is where it gets technical, because all I've done is I've used a can of spray adhesive, laid it down on top of my blank, and I've marked out this radius here right on top. I don't even know what the diameter of it is. Looks to be almost roughly about a 2.5-inch diameter, it looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to the bandsaw. I'm going to hog most of this out with the bandsaw, and then we're going to hit it over at the oscillating drum sander and sand this to a nice curve. And there you go. That is that piece done. And now this is the neck support. So this neck support is going to get glued squarely on the front end of our bracket, just like this. So we're going to center it on our upright piece here as best we can. Just eyeball it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but glue it on there, clamp it in place, and let it dry. Well, our front support bracket is dry, and this is what you're looking at so far. Now, it still needs a sanding here. We want to break these sharp corners, but we'll get to that after. So I've taken a scrap piece of beech. This was over in the rack. It doesn't have to be beech. Any kind of hardwood will do. And I've turned this little kind of a knob with a 1/4-inch hole in the one end. This, guys, is going to be the underpart that connects to your table. So what I have is a shop-made jig knob. I didn't do a video on this, guys. We've done so many videos on jig knobs. I could link them in the description if you'd like. But essentially, this 1/4-inch hole is going to go over top of our 1/4-inch threads of our jig knob. And this here is going to spin up and clamp onto the table. Now, if you want, guys, you can add some flocking to that, or even a piece of rubber. You can add some cork maybe to the top up here and this little disc, just to give it a little extra padding so that it doesn't scratch or mar the surface of your table. I may look into that, but for now, we're just concerned more on the build of this. Now, this is just a friction fit. I would not glue this in. You want this to be able to spin on here once it gets in contact with the table. As well, if you glue that in place, it's going to be spinning on the bottom of your table, and that is going to cause you problems as well. So there you go. There is the clamping mechanism for this done. And there is one more thing that we can add to this. It's not necessary, and I'm not going to add it to this particular model. But if you want, you can add a Velcro strap that will hold this, or hold the neck of your guitar into this cradle. I think it might be a little overkill for my liking, but if it would suit you to add that, then that would work as well. So let me go get my guitar, or one of them, and I'll show you how this works. Well, I don't really have any table surfaces here in the shop to attach this to, so I'm going to have to use the table saw. So essentially, you sit this in place here, you tighten up your bottom clamp. You don't have to crank on it, guys. Just a little tiny twist will get a good connection. And when you're done playing your guitar, you just lean it into your holder, and that's it. It holds it, it keeps it from toppling over. Now, if somebody bangs into it, it's still going to fall over. So if you want to add a Velcro strap around the back to hold it just gently across the front of your strings, just below the nut, well, then that's up to you. But honestly, it's a great little device, and keep your guitar from tipping over. And there you have it, a tabletop guitar support. Guys, if you play guitar, or if you know somebody that plays guitar, this is the perfect project for you. It's a great way to use up scrap. It's a fantastic way to spend a couple hours in the shop. It's a good way to hone your skills as far as things like using dowel centers, getting square corners, rounding things off at the sander. It's a great way to hone all of those skills. As well, a little bit of lathe turning. Now, that piece there, you don't really have to do that. You can just use a simple round piece of wood with a 1/4-inch hole, not through, but a stopped hole in it, just to protect the underside of your table. That's its only purpose. It doesn't have to be a turn fancy piece like what I've done here today. So use your imagination, come up with something different if you like, as long as you put something there, because it's important to protect the surface that you're clamping this to. Guys, every single piece of this was made from just scrap that I had in the rack. The mahogany happened to be up there. I mean, I didn't do anything to it. I didn't mill it. All I did was cut it to the sizes that I wanted. It was just a small piece sitting in the rack. That jig knob, I made that on the show here quite some time ago as a demonstration. So it finally found a home. That piece of beech, I actually had a viewer send me a couple chunks of beech years ago. It was several years ago. And I ended up turning it out of that. So every single piece of this was all scrap, with the exception, of course, of the threaded insert. Now that I have stocked here in the shop, but it's one threaded insert. It's not that big of a deal. Guys, either way, it's a great project. It's a great way to support your guitar while you're putting it down for a second to run and get yourself a beverage, or to go answer the phone, or what have you. It's a great project. It's a lot of fun. It's easy. It is so in line with the beginner. There is nothing here that is out of the ordinary for a beginner. There is nothing that is out of reach. It's just a great all-around fun project. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed the project. If you haven't already, or if you found any part of this show useful or helpful to you, why not like and subscribe? We have an amazing audience base here on the show, and I'm hoping that you're going to consider becoming a part of that. I want to thank you again for tuning in, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope that you're going to try some of this for yourself. I hope that you were able to take something positive away from today's show, but more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.